ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Ray Dalio, legendary investor and New York Times best-selling author, wants to pass along his understanding of how countries go broke, because he believes the U.S. budget and debt situation needs to be addressed. To give you that knowledge, he has put the draft of his book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle, online for free. It's available now at economicprinciples.org.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan and Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan and Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
5 immersive worlds, 1 amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe opens May 22nd at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Hey everybody, it's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. No Mike tonight, he couldn't make it, but I have a super duper extra special guest. We started this season with our first ever actual Islander. We now have our first ever actual Islander executive, and I'm very excited. He's probably still best known as the GM of the New York Rangers, but he has had a long history with the Islanders going back over 40 years as a player, a scout, and a general manager. He is also currently one of the hosts of the NHL Wraparound podcast, and we are very, very pleased and honored to welcome in Neil Smith. Neil, how are you this evening?
I'm great, Daniel. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We are going to talk about your long association with the Islanders, which goes back many years. But I want to start with the now, because you actually currently work for UBS. And so you are, you go between the team, the arena, the company, and you actually take in a ton of Islanders games. And so my first thought when I saw that and read that was, how many times have you walked down the hallways of UBS Arena past a group of people and heard one person say to the other, dude, was that Neil Smith that just walked by?
Yeah, I hear that in the elevator. I'm at most of the games. I'd say I've missed this past season, I might have missed 2 to 3 games. And of course, in the COVID year, the first year of the building, it was hard to be there all the time because of the restrictions. But no, I love the building. It's the best building I've ever been in. And UBS has me doing client relations there, which is basically, trying to entertain the folks that come as clients of UBS. And it's an enjoyable night for me too, because I get, what could be better? I'm watching hockey, I'm talking to people and making people happy at the same time.
Yeah. It's not every day that, the former general manager of the team is walking around the arena, but you have a unique situation. You're watching a team that you have watched many, many years as a player and as an executive and as a rival. And we're going to get to all of that throughout the course of this interview. But I want to start with June 8th, 2006. This was the day you were named the Islanders general manager. It was really a stunning and sort of spectacular day for the team. It wasn't just you. It was Ted Nolan was brought in as the coach. Pat LaFontaine, Bryan Trottier were all brought in as part of a management committee that we'll hear a lot about.
I'm just so happy to be back with this logo, with this organization. I'm very passionate about it because I started here. I got my opportunity here, and it's amazing life for me to go full circle. It's just I'm one of the luckiest guys ever.
What were your memories of that hiring process? I know it was a long time ago, but like when were you first approached by Charles Wang to kind of join the team and lead this management committee? Because you at that point had been out of the NHL sort of management game for about 6 years. So was him coming to you a bit of a surprise?
No, not really. I mean, I wanted to be a GM, and when the Islanders job was going to come open because they were going to, tell Milbury that he wasn't going to do it anymore, I was very excited to try to be there for a number of reasons, mostly because my heart was still there from the Bill Torrey days and the days when I started out in the business. And the second of all was that I was well known in New York already, and it would be great. And we could stay living there. And I had my small son and all this other stuff. There was a lot of reasons to be excited about it. However, what I didn't do, Daniel, was my homework on the owner. I did not do that. And so he called me. I interviewed with him. I went off. I interviewed a second time. And I was doing the Carolina Edmonton final on TV when he actually called me and said he'd like to offer me the job. And he said to me, here's what I'm going to pay you. And I said, wait a minute, that's not happening. We're not doing it that way. And I knew in the beginning this is really odd, some of the ways that he approached this. But I never, ever was told ever that, well, you'll be the general manager, but you won't be able to do the things that a general manager does. So I get there, we have the press conference, and right away, I got to go into a room in a hotel room with 5 or 6 guys, including Milbury, that are going to make decisions on things like free agency and, draft, the entry draft and stuff. And I'm like, you can't do it this way. And, it just got worse as time went on. And so people laugh about the 40 days. But actually, the only days that I felt good were the days that we had free agency, because Ken Morrow and myself were in there alone, and we were able to do a good job on free agency.
Yeah.
And then on the draft, when I was able to get to the scouts and really organize the thing, we ended up with a real good draft for the Islanders down the road. So, but the rest of the time, it was just a clown show. I mean, you weren't allowed to do anything. Pat LaFontaine and I suggested a couple of things, and Wang right away said, no, we're not doing that. We've got a good organization. And I looked at him and I'm like, good? Like, you don't know the definition of good.
Right.
And anyway, so it came to blows. And really, when the crap hit the fan was when DiPietro's contract was up, and DiPietro had not agreed to his qualifying offer and had not filed for arbitration. This was their strategy, that he was needed so badly that, we would do what we had to do to sign him. Well, his strategy was right, because what I didn't know was that Charles was in love with him, and that he said to me at one point, what would you do if I told you that I would give Ricky a 15-year contract? I said, I'd tell you you're crazy. And he said, and then what happened was Rick Curran, who was his agent, who lives in Philly, and was going to come up, and we were going to have a meeting about DiPietro. And I told Wang that I think we should just tell him, you either sign your qualifying offer or you sit out all year, because we had all the cards. When you don't file for arbitration and you don't agree to your qualifier, you have no leverage whatsoever. If the
Right.
team wants to leave you sitting out, they can do that. And I said that should be our thing. Of course, Charles wouldn't do that because what I didn't know was he'd been at the America's Got Talent concert with Rick a day before.
Wow.
So it was, it was
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And that DiPietro thing, I think, was the thing that completely blew up the relationship between me and him.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds about right. Cause I mean, from what I understand, well, first of all, the sitting home without a contract thing, they actually would end up doing with Sean Bergenheim, I believe, a year later or so. Like they had him he missed almost basically an entire season because of that. But if I'm not mistaken, they wanted to sign Rick the year before to a 16-year contract, I think, or something like that. Unless I'm misremembering, maybe Mike Milbury was like, yeah, no, let's not do that. And then they presented it to you and you said the same thing, basically.
Yeah. Well, I said, I'm not doing that. We're going to get him on a 3-year at the most. And I said, what? I said, I don't understand why you think this guy's so great. Never made the playoffs, doesn't have that great of a goals against average or a save percentage. But see, what was going on here was that Charles was in love with some of the players, and DiPietro was one of them.
Yeah.
And so it was just irrational, illogical thinking. And so I get out of there, and then he makes Garth, DiPietro's backup, the GM. And so then he's able to tell Garth, well, here's what I want to do with Ricky. And Garth's like, okay, I mean, I don't know what to do, so I'll do whatever you want.
It always bothered me, and I think my friend Mike too, that like Garth kind of gets saddled with that contract, but it's like, no, if you knew the team, that was the Charles idea. Like that was his idea. That wasn't Garth's idea. Why would a guy just taking over a team to propose a 15-year contract?
No, it was Charles not understanding that you want to give security to somebody because he thought they'll play better with a lot of security. And what he didn't know was, we're talking about athletics. We're not talking about accounting, and so it was a bad decision. I'm glad I wasn't there for it because I wouldn't want it saddled on my resume that I did that.
Yeah. No, I was there watching it and I didn't like it. It wasn't on my resume either, but I had to watch it, unfortunately. I just, you're in the room with all of these guys. And one of those guys was Ted Nolan, who was the coach. And he was, again, picked. You didn't get to pick the coach. He was already picked for you. I'm curious about what your relationship was with him. I got to tell you, as a fan, we were very excited that the team had hired Nolan because we kind of felt like he was almost already one of us, having been kind of out of the league for a while. Did you find, I mean, obviously you only got to the end of the summer, but did you find it easy to work with Ted? Did you feel like you were aligned with him at least?
Yeah. And Pat LaFontaine and Ted were very, very close. And so, I actually grew to like Ted. And when I say grew to like him, I had no reason not to like him. He'd been in Detroit with me earlier in my career in Adirondack. So I knew Teddy. And you know what? That part of it was fine. I mean, he said, he gave me his thoughts and needs for the team. And that's one of the reasons we got Chris Simon, because that's who he wanted. And that's fine. I mean, when the coach has a feel for how much toughness he needs. And so I didn't find Ted. We would have been fine. Ted and I, it would have been fine. I don't think that it's appropriate that the GM doesn't pick the coach, but it was too late because when I agreed to go there, I said, okay. And then he said, okay, do you want to know who the coach is going to be? And I go, what did you say? Yeah. So, and then I had to make the decision. Okay. Do I want to turn this down and stay doing TV? And, I was longing to be back in the NHL and not doing TV. So, I ain't looking back on it now. I should never have done it. I should have said no to the whole thing and said, I'll just wait for a proper opportunity and not be so, so smitten with this situation of going back to New York again.
Right. You were on a podcast with a friend of ours, Sean Cuthbert, last year, Hockey Night in New York. And you said you knew you were in trouble right away. And that's kind of a little shocking to me. And also, frankly, I felt a little bad that, it seemed like you knew right away that this was probably not going to be a good situation.
Well, I did. And I did. And I knew right from the first day because of the fact that we had to have these meetings with everybody else in there. And so they were making decisions that the GM should make, not that the committee should make. Yeah. And I knew I was in big trouble. And this went on for that month that I was there, or a month and a half, whatever it was. And it got to the point where I was so depressed, and seriously depressed, that I had trouble getting out of bed and going to the Coliseum, because it was just like, I can't do this. Like this, I've been in control of the New York Rangers for over a decade, like complete control. And now I can't make the decisions for the Islanders.
Yeah.
It was craziness.
That's unfortunate. I'm really sorry to hear that, but I hear you. Like, when you don't feel you're not being supported, you're not kind of like being your true self, not doing what you can do. It's rough. It's very rough, and I'm really sorry to hear that. But like you alluded to before, despite these issues and despite your feelings at the time and the sort of handcuffs that were on you, you were actually incredibly productive during this time, both at the draft and at the free agent table. And some of the players that you selected during these periods ended up being Islanders for quite some time, and again, having very productive careers. We might as well start with the draft. And your first pick at the draft was Kyle Okposo, who is still a beloved figure amongst Islanders fans, went on to play many years.
Up next, it's the New York Islanders, Ted Nolan and Neil Smith, with their first selection in the new regime from the Islanders.
Well, Neil Smith's the new GM, but he's no stranger to this, of course. He was the director of scouting for the Detroit Red Wings back in '89 when they drafted, among others, Nicholas Lidstrom, Sergei Fedorov, and others. Prior to that, he was a scout for the Islanders, so he's come full circle. Ted Nolan, of course, is the coach. I don't think even the Islanders had any idea as of a couple of days ago who they were going to take.
So Tony Feltrin is the head scout there and the man in the middle between Neil Smith and Ted Nolan, and obviously they've got to work off of his list.
The New York Islanders would like to say hello to all the great hockey fans of the new National Hockey League all over the country and all over Canada and the United States. And especially the great fans back at the Nassau Coliseum watching the draft today. For the New York Islanders' first-round selection, on behalf of Tony Feltrin and the scouting staff, the selection will be made by our new head coach, Ted Nolan.
Thank you. New York Islanders are very proud to select from Des Moines of the USHL right winger Kyle Okposo.
Well, this isn't a surprise. Bob, you had Kyle Okposo ranked 8th overall. He goes 7th to the Islanders.
That's right. He wears number 8, as a matter of fact, and wears it because his favorite player is Alexander Ovechkin. This guy is a bull in a china shop.
So what made him the guy? Like, what made, I mean, you were drafting 7th overall. I don't know what other players were available at the time, but like, what made you think Kyle Okposo was the right guy for what your vision of the Islanders would have been?
They were going to take, when I got there, they were going to take the defenseman that the Rangers ended up taking out of junior. Sanguinetti.
Oh, Bobby Sanguinetti. Okay.
Bobby Sanguinetti. Is that who they were taking? And I said, no, I've looked at all the paperwork and looked at all the testing results and stuff. And I believe a lot in psychological inventories and seeing where a guy's at in his thought process and so on. Pittsburgh picked Jordan Staal. And so Kyle Okposo had numbers that I was looking at that were close to Jordan Staal. And I'm going like, no, this is the guy. This is a big, strong guy out of college. And this is the guy we're going to take. So we took Kyle, and I'm very proud of him. And I actually called him when he retired after the Stanley Cup last year. And I said, because I had not talked to him since the day of the draft.
Wow.
Yeah. And I said, Kyle, Neil Smith, I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you. And the great career you've had, and the fact that I've had something to do with your career is really great. And I wish you well, and congrats on the cup and so on. And then we got talking a little bit about the Islander days and all that stuff. But yeah, he was a real good pick and a real good player for the Islanders. And as I said, I could always look and see him playing for them, and I was proud of the fact that I'd had a hand in that decision.
Yeah, no, I mean, that worked out fantastically. I mean, he was, again, just a guy that was a real avatar for us in that sort of rebuild era alongside John Tavares, Josh Bailey, all these other guys. But it didn't stop there. You also drafted a couple of other guys that were around for the Islanders for a long time, namely Andrew McDonald, Jesse Joensuu, and guys that would hang around. McDonald, he took a lot of heat from the team for, but being a defenseman in that era of the Islanders could not have possibly been easy. But I mean, do you have any memories of picking those guys? I know they're like sort of late in the draft, and maybe at some point.
No, I remember them very well. Jesse Joensuu, I just remember that we had good reports on him, and that there was a decision between a couple guys. But to be completely honest with you, I didn't see these guys play. Remember, I was doing TV right up until the final, and so I can't lie to people and say, "Oh, I went out and saw them, and that's who I thought was the best player." You can watch video, you can do things like that, but I mean, Jesse Joensuu was just picked over guys. Now, the truth about Andrew McDonald, how was he picked? He played for Ted Nolan in junior, and Ted Nolan said to me, "I can't believe these guys from the league are already been picked, and Andrew McDonald hasn't been picked. Like, he's way better than them." So he said, "Okay," and we took him, and that's the truth. So it's Ted Nolan's credit that they ended up with him.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. I think I remember that, but yeah, that's right. And it's amazing. Like, as a general manager, when you pick a guy, I mean, obviously you do all the intel, you do all the scouting, you do all the reports and all that stuff. But like when you look back and you see a player like a Kyle Okposo, 1,000 games in the NHL, I'm pretty sure McDonald was well over 500 with both the Islanders and Flyers. And, that's got to be incredibly satisfying for you to know that you took a guy that had some real longevity, because not every player gets to that level. Forget about 1,000. Some people don't even get to 500, but like, as a general manager, how does that feel to look back on some of these drafts, even with the Rangers, even with the Red Wings, who you were the director of scouting of even before all of this? You have to look back and be like, wow, these guys really had great careers. And like you said, you were a part of that. You were the guy who kind of brought them in.
Yeah. As a GM, what you do is your real talent is finding the right people to find the players.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can't go out and do it yourself. So you get the right people, you get people that know more about it than you do, and you put them in a place to give you advice on what we should do with the next move. And that's what was going on with the Islanders for that short period of time. Definitely when I was with the Rangers, that's what went on. Now, even having said that, you still end up making mistakes.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, you're being told, for example, with the Rangers, we picked in 99, very high in the draft, Pavel Brendel. And I was being told by the scouts, he scored 92 goals in Calgary, the Western League. He can put the puck through the net, through the goalie, through the boards. I mean, he's that good. And I saw him play, and I thought, well, you know what? This might be a Mike Bossy. This might be our Mike Bossy. And didn't turn out that way. And then it was a mistake. Well, it's not like as if I went and saw him 15 times and then decided that he was who I was going to take. So,
right.
but you either take the credit or take the blame. That's what you're paid to do. Now in Detroit, the best pick I ever made by far, nothing even close to it, was Nicholas Lidstrom in the third round, who went on to win 7 Norris trophies.
Jeez.
So that was, and that was very much a different type of pick, because my scout in Stockholm, Christer Rockstrom, knew Nicholas Lidstrom, and the rest of the league didn't know about him. And we hit it and hit it and hit it. And then, and then got him in that draft. And then of course we take him in 89, and that summer I go to the Rangers. So I don't get anything out of it other than people that know the truth about it. But it's very satisfying when you see something. I'll tell you, for example, Adam Graves. I drafted Adam Graves for Detroit, and then I took a big leap of faith on him in 1991 and signed him as a Group 1 free agent, much to the chagrin of all the older GMs in the league that were pissed off at me. And to have faith in a kid, see something in him, and then him turn in to be Adam Graves I can't tell you how satisfying that is.
Yeah.
It's anybody can sign a free agent. Anybody can go and throw money at somebody and say, come to my team. That's the least satisfying of all the different ways of doing things. A trade is very satisfying.
Mm.
Signing a free agent is not satisfying. And especially if he doesn't live up to his billing, then you're getting crucified for it.
Right.
So it's the scouting and the developing is the most satisfying part.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to say, as an Islanders podcast and Islanders fan for 40 years, there's not a ton of Rangers that I like, I guess, for lack of a better word. Adam Graves is one of those, though. Like, Adam Graves was a great player, but just a super great guy. I don't think there's a charity in New York that Adam Graves has not shown up for at some point, right? Like, he's just one of these guys that is constantly doing charity work and all kinds of stuff, and just a terrific dude all around.
And that comes from his family upbringing, because his family had foster children in the home with him and his sister. Wow. And they looked after a lot of people. His dad was a police officer, and they were a very outstanding family. And they had he does bring those virtues that he has from his upbringing.
Yeah, no, I was always very impressed with the charity stuff he did. But you mentioned free agents, and again, this was where you did a lot of work in this time, and you signed guys who managed to stick with the Islanders for quite some time. 5 guys in particular: Mike Sillinger, Brendan Witt, Andy Hilbert, Tom Poti, Chris Simon. Of those 5 guys, Poti is the only one to have spent only 1 season with the Islanders. Everybody else is at least 2, and in Witt's case, geez, he almost played like 250 games for the Islanders. Like, the guy was indestructible, basically. But Sillinger, I mean, I'll go through them one by one. Sillinger is a personal favorite of Mike's, my co-host, and he's, the Islanders were his 12th and final team, and he got a 3-year deal, which I don't think he probably had from any of those other teams. What made you see in Sillinger, like what attributes do you think he brought to the team? Because, as a guy who moves around a lot, you almost wonder, like, what's the deal here? But he found real stability here, which was really kind of amazing to see.
Well, I drafted Mike for the Red Wings back in the 80s. And so I knew Mike as a person. And, players get moved around a lot for one of 2 reasons. They either get moved around because they have talent, but all of a sudden there's something there that you don't want on your team, or they get moved around because they bring an intangible to the locker room everywhere they go. It may not show up on the ice as a star, but it shows up in the locker room, and they're a guy you can win with, even though not the most talented guy in the world. And I think that's where Mike Sillinger fit in. He was a guy who wasn't the most talented guy in the world, but had great work ethic, was a great team guy, and any coach in the league would love to have him. But of course, along comes a more talented guy, and they got to move Mike out to the next team. And I think that's why he moved around so much. But I've seen others who have been on, 9 teams in 11 years, and there's always got to be a reason why they don't stick around for very long. And so that happens as well. But I knew Mike for a while. So that was, I knew what I was getting with him.
Yeah. It was a really interesting case too, because like he had such a great season the year before, playing for Nashville, and I forget the other team, but and you might have thought, wow, that's kind of an outlier season, but he came to the Islanders and he was terrific. For 3 seasons. He was absolutely terrific, and was really, became a real important piece to that team.
And on the other guys, like on Tom Poti, they needed a good offensive defenseman, point man type of thing, a latter day Dougie Hamilton type as of today's thing. And even though Tom Poti got run out of the Rangers, and people wondered why I was signing him. Well, I was signing him because he wasn't going to be under the spotlight in the Island that he was in the Garden. And I knew he had a lot of talent. As I told you, Chris Simon was something that Teddy Nolan wanted. And Brendan Witt was just like, he was a hard-nosed Washington Capitals defenseman for quite a while. And we needed defense that year. And so we were able to talk him into coming over to the Islanders. And it turned out to be a good free agent summer for the Islanders.
For sure. And Witt, I mean, I remember at the time, he was one of the sort of top available guys. And, those guys generally didn't sign with the Islanders. But I remember, like, he was available and he signed with the Islanders. I was like, wow, that's actually a really big get for them, because guys who with name recognition didn't often, sign with the Islanders. And he brought, he's almost the exact opposite of Tom Poti. He's like the defensive, the gnarly kind of gritty type. And nothing was more gritty about Brendan Witt than that time he actually got hit by a car on the way to a game in Philadelphia. And that legend will live on. And he played that night because, that's the kind of guy Brendan Witt was. But
well, the thing is that I think that summer too, not to pat my own self on the back, but I think I was there. It wasn't that long since we'd won the cup in New York, and they knew who I was. I was well known. And I think they thought, oh, it's not so bad to sign with the Islanders. They're going in the right direction now. They're going to turn in the right direction. I want to be there. I'll consider them like I would anybody else. And it was one of the few summers where it wasn't a clown show. So, and I think that's why I was able to get those guys. Of course, unfortunately for those guys, they didn't know that the circus was right around the corner and coming back in again.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that's a perfect segue, because the clown show did eventually resume, and this would have been on July 18th.
It was a primetime run, even shorter than Joni loves Chachi. Neil Smith didn't love Long Island, and before the New York Islanders could even play a game under his leadership, his tenure as GM is over. He was hired along with new coach Ted Nolan June 8th and fired today. Said Smith, quote, "It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in sports." But maybe he should reevaluate that statement, because how about his replacement? Garth Snow has retired as a player to become the new general manager of the team. Owner Charles Wang said that he spoke with Garth at length throughout the spring about the GM position and was really impressed with the goalie's passion and knowledge. Last season was Snow's 4th with the Isles and 12th in the NHL. He won 135 games in 368 appearances. Unbelievable.
40 days after you were hired, you were let go by the Islanders over philosophical opposition to our business model, according to Charles Wang. And from what it sounds like, he wasn't wrong, but like you said, that was never going to work. Like a committee approach to managing a hockey team just ain't going to work.
No, and he claims that he had told me that before I got the job, which is all BS. He didn't tell me that. As Brian Burke said, who testified, they said, "Did Neil ever tell you that it was going to be run by committee?" And he said, "No, because if he had told me, I would have told him never to go there." So he says, "You can't run a team like that." And Wang just wanted to do everything different than everybody else.
Yeah.
And, he didn't, I don't know what he thought, but he was, I was just happy to get out of there. Like I really was, because I couldn't do it. As I told you, I was depressed. I couldn't do it. There was no way.
Yeah. Did you go to like arbitration or something? Is that why Brian Burke?
Yeah, because he didn't want to pay. Wang didn't want to pay me after this thing blew up. I hadn't signed my contract. Why didn't you sign your contract? Because I was too depressed. I didn't know whether I wanted to stay or not.
Wow.
And so, but then he had to pay me something, and he didn't want to pay me the contract. He wanted to just, I don't know what he wanted to do. Yeah. And it ended up, we went to arbitration in front of Gary Bettman. For all intents and purposes, of course, the owner won, because but that's okay. That's the money's the least of it. Really, it's, looking back, I'm glad I got out when I did.
Right.
Because life's too short to do stuff that you're depressed about.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you got out of there with your sanity, which is probably more valuable than whatever they would have paid you. But no, I know. And it's great. I mean, I really appreciate you being as candid as you are here, because you don't often hear this, like, how like mentally taxing a situation like this would be for somebody in this position. I mean, there's already a lot of pressure, right? You're a general manager of a hockey team. Like, that's a big deal. You got a lot of decisions to make, but like, even in this situation, it's just, it sounds like it was really, really rough on you. And it's
well, you have pride in your work. You have pride in, you've honed your craft since 1980. And at that time it's 2006. I've been with Al Arbor. I've been with Bill Torrey. I've been with Bill Dineen and Jimmy Devellano, and on and on and on. And now all of a sudden you're going to tell me that I'm only one of five that's going to make decisions, and people that don't have my experience are going to be, no, that's not happening. That is not happening, because I have too much pride in myself, and I don't want to be, and this is the truth, and I've said it before, I will not be part of a clown show.
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to. And I think that, in fact, I know that, this all got back to Charles, that I was not happy and that I was, sort of bitching about the way things were there. And he's right. I was, because I wasn't going to do it. There's no way
Right.
you couldn't win running it that way. And guess what? I was proven right. The only season they made the playoffs was a season that I did all the free agent work, and they snuck in by the skin of their teeth at the last day on a penalty shots and not penalty shots, sorry, shootout. And after that, it was like back to the good old, bottom of the league.
Yeah, we talk about that. And what's funny too is like the committee thing just went away, and Garth and Charles, I guess, were kind of in charge at that point.
Well, I think that Garth, for some reason, Charles had interviewed Garth to be GM while he was backup goalie.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he decided, I guess I can't make the backup goalie the GM, so I'll hire this guy, Smith. So then when he thought, I got to get rid of Smith because he's bitching and whining too much, I'll just go back and get Garth because he'll do anything to be the GM, which he would. And so, then all of a sudden it was like, well, Garth didn't know what he was doing. So I'm sure he was saying to Charles, what do you want me to do here? What do you want me to do there? Because he had no clue what he was supposed to do. So it was, as I said, it was a clown show, just a clown show.
Did you ever talk with Garth about this? Because no. You've been around ranks. No,
never. No, I know Garth. I actually, when he played in the league, I was out with him one night. I remember in particular, and he's friends with some of my friends. But I've never spoken to him since that happened.
And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly. But you mentioned before that you had known Bill Torrey and Al Arbor and Jimmy DeVillano. And this is where it gets back to what I was saying off the top, which is your association with the Islanders wasn't just this 40 days in 2006. You go back to the Islanders back to 1974, which was when they drafted you out of Western Michigan University. Before I go any further, how does it feel to be an NCAA champion with the Western Michigan Broncos?
Yeah, I know. I'm happy for them. It only took 50 years. I played on the very first Western Michigan Division I team. I was captain of that team in 1975. So it's 2025 is 50 years later, and they win the NCAA championship. And I'm very proud of the fact I didn't realize it until I started thinking about it, that I played in the first Division I game as the captain for Western Michigan University. And now they've won the national championship. So as a player, I'm very proud of that. But I want to tell you something, that I actually go back with the Islanders to 1972.
Oh.
And the reason for that is because I was friends with Jimmy DeVillano. Jimmy ended up getting hired as a scout for the Islanders in 1972. And so right from the beginning, I was Islander centric because he was there and I was following them. And as you know, in the first year when they were ravaged by the WHA and they were just horrible, which led them to be a dynasty because they got Billy Harris in the very first draft when Atlanta got Jacques Richard second. They got Dennis Potvin first in the the next draft, their second draft in the league. They got Clark Gillies and Bryan Trottier in their third draft in the league. And so you had the makings of a dynasty right there. And then you add to it Bossy and all the rest of them. The other part is that I watched was Bill Torrey hired a very popular guy to be the first coach of the Islanders, Phil Goyette, a former Ranger. And Phil Goyette came in and when the team struggled the way it did that first year, struggled is a nice term, actually. It was worse than struggled. So then he decided that Earl Ingerfield was on the staff. So Earl would finish the year as coach of the Islanders. And then it was Jimmy and some others that said, Al Arbour was a really good coach in St. Louis, and you can get him from St. Louis. He was a good player, won multiple Stanley Cups as a player. And Bill Torrey was smart enough to hire Al Arbour, and away we go. It's just, it was phenomenal. So I know the history of the Islanders extremely well. And I know a lot of players like Jerry Hart and Jean Potvin and others that we've lost, Spinner Spencer and Clark Gillies and, of course, Bossy and others. And I go way back with them. So I've got a very much of a, when you grow up someplace, but let's say you grow up in the town, wherever that is, and that's home. But then, you go off to a bigger city somewhere and you work at a company or you do something, and then they all think that you're from there, but you don't, you're not really from there. You feel comfortable when you get back to that little town where you grew up. Right. And that's me and the Islanders.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable when I'm back at the Islanders because that's where I grew up. And Rich Torrey, Bill's son, is a very good friend of mine. Jay Arbour, who's Al's son, is a very good friend of mine. Sam Rosen, I've known since way back then. He was never the Islanders guy, but I just talked to Jigs McDonald yesterday. Eddie Westfall's a friend. I mean, I go back with everybody. I can name everybody from those years. So you can see that I'm very, very comfortable around the Islanders.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's funny because all this time, even when you were the Rangers GM, I knew that the Islanders had drafted you, but I didn't realize that it was in 74, which, like you just said, was the same draft as Gillies, Trottier. I think Dave Langevin was also in that draft.
Stefan Pearson.
Stefan Pearson. That's an amazing, that is one of the foundational drafts of this team. Like you said, it helped build a dynasty. That's amazing that you were part of that draft class. I mean, we're going to talk about, your playing career in a minute, but again, that's got to be just incredibly satisfying to just be man, I was drafted in the same draft as Bryan Trottier. That's crazy. And then the fact that you would go on to know Trottier and know Gillies and all of these guys must make it feel like you feel like part of the club, probably.
Well, and I pale in comparison as a player to those guys. So I don't even want to, for one moment, think that I was comparable to any of those guys you just mentioned. But I'm very proud of the fact that Trottier and I are good friends. I was friends with Clark. I'm friends with Dennis, friends with Ken Morrow. And in fact, I'll tell you for your listeners, my partner, Vic Morin, and I just did a 45th anniversary special with Dennis Potvin, Ken Morrow, and John Tonelli on the 45th anniversary of the 1980 Stanley Cup. And it's coming out on May 24th.
Oh,
and
perfect.
That's how comfortable I am with the Islanders that we would do that. So it's really, I'm very, very proud of that time in my life, and that was part of my life. I'm probably prouder of, I'm proud of my time with the Rangers, of course, and being able to accomplish something that no other live human beings have been able to do. But my days with the Islanders were my foundational days and my upbringing as a hockey person.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. And I'm so fascinated by that era. I mean, it's before I was born in 76. So a lot of this stuff is sort of before my time. When they won the cup, I was very, very small, but those sort of foundational years are so fascinating to me. We did an episode of this show with an author named Greg Prado, who wrote about the first year of the Islanders. He has a book called Hapless Islanders. We just did an episode with Alan Krita, who co-wrote the book with Ken Morrow. And it was it's just fascinating to go back and all those foundational players and stories and stuff. I'll never get tired of hearing that stuff. It's amazing. So you were drafted, you played all 4 years at Western Michigan. You played a couple of seasons in the IHL. And then you joined the Islanders scouting staff in 1980. And this would kind of kick off your executive career. And some of the players drafted in this time, again, foundational players for the Islanders going forward. Brent Sutter, Kelly Rudy, Gord Dineen, Pat Flatley. I know you were new to the staff at that point. The guy running those drafts, we'll talk about again in a minute. You already mentioned him, Jim Devellano. What are your memories of that era? I mean, it's different now. Like, obviously now the draft is a big show and there's a big table with all these people sitting there, but it wasn't like that. But I mean, do you have any memories of kind of the decisions to take guys like Sutter, Rudy, and these other players that would go on to play for a long time?
Well, again, at full transparency, I was doing pro scouting for Al Arbor. I was doing pre-game scouting. So I was in the trenches at NHL games all the time and not doing amateurs. Jimmy D, Jerry Eamon, Henry Saraceno, Earl Ingerfield, and others were doing the amateurs. And Jimmy was running that staff. And so I might have been at some of the drafts, but I certainly wasn't a decision maker in them like I was in Detroit. I was just starting in the business, lucky to be with the Islanders, like falling out of heaven to fall into, go from being a struggling IHL player to suddenly working with Al Arbor. So those were really formative years for me, but I do want to be honest. I was not the guy that's saying, yeah, we should pick Brent Sutter. I didn't have anything to do with it.
That's all right. I appreciate your honesty, because you could have just said you were, and I would have totally believed you. So I appreciate it.
Do you know how many times I've been asked, did I play in the NHL? And I'll say, no, never played a game, because it would be so easy to say, oh yeah, sure, I played for the Islanders.
Yeah. Right.
And unless they knew to look up on Hockey DB or look up on some site, but I can't do that. That's not who I am. I've got enough to say that I don't need to claim false things. I can claim the truth and still be good.
Yeah, I think being the only general manager since the advent of World War II to lead a team to the Stanley Cup, it's probably a big enough deal that you don't need to make anything up, right? That's very impressive. But after a couple of years with the Islanders, you did join the Red Wings staff, which you mentioned before, and this was when Jim Devellano was the Red Wings GM. I read his book, by the way, which was terrific, and went into a lot of those early drafts and those early years for the Red Wings when they were really, really struggling. But this is, again, a different dynasty, and it took a while for them to get there, but you're talking about players that were drafted along the lines of Steve Yzerman, Bob Probert, who else? It was Steve Chason, a lot of these, Joe Murphy.
Joey Koser, Adam
Koser,
Graves. You can go on and on. We had some real good drafts. And 89 was coined by Sports Illustrated as the best draft in sports, not hockey, sports history, because we ended up with 5 or 6 longtime NHL players in one draft.
Yeah, 4 guys that all played over 1,000 games. Sillinger, Lidstrom, Fedorov, and Dallas Drake. And I mean, you took Nick Lidstrom in the 3rd round and Sergei Fedorov in the 4th round. That's just absurd. Like, you can't that's unbelievable. Like, again, and this is back at a time when, like, foreign players, in one case in Sweden or the Soviet Union, this was a pretty rare thing. Like, was there a discussion about bringing these guys over? Was there a worry that maybe, like, they weren't going to make it over here? Or were you pretty confident that Sergei Fedorov was going to, be kind of a big deal?
Well, you're sort of confident that you knew if they ever did get out, they'd be your best players.
Right.
There was no players like them over here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it was different with Nick Lidstrom. He was a Swede, and we were at that time entering into the Finnish, Swedish, Czechs, and Russians coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very young, and I loved going to Europe. And that was part of the thing that helped Detroit, because normally scouts are older guys. When I say older, I mean they're not in their 20s. And I was in my 20s and enjoying my time in Stockholm and Helsinki and Moscow and so on. So that really helped us, be able to find players and compare them to guys back in North America. And again, about the Russians, I think society was sort of headed in that direction, but you knew to wait, and that if you waited and you got them, they'd be tremendous.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. And that was proven time again. We saw them here with the Devils,
and that's who really started it, right? When Fedosov came to the Devils and was allowed to go to the Devils by the government, that sort of opened the door to getting more and more out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a wild time. And again, certain teams were able to take advantage of that, like the Red Wings, like the Devils. The Islanders, not so much. They got a couple of good players out of it.
Well, they got Kasperitis.
Yeah, they got Kasperitis. Yeah. And Ziggy Palffy later on out of Slovakia.
Yeah, Zygmunt Palffy. Yep.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss. Oof, like wind in your hair carefree. Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree. Yes! Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree. He's on a roll now. Spit toothpaste on the faucet. You got it. You got it. Peanut butter on the light switch. Oh, spritz, spritz. Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back. Use as directed.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA? Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
But real quick on Jim Devellano, we talk a lot about Bill Torrey, Al Arbour, obviously. You mentioned Henry Saraceno before, who was, instrumental in drafting Mike Bossy. So we have these guys that sort of come up, the non-players that come up and make a big impression on the team. Jim Devellano, unfortunately, hasn't been that. I mean, I think it's because he spent more time in Detroit. He's still in Detroit now. And, maybe at that point, people kind of think of him as a Detroit guy, but you obviously go back with him even before, coming to the Islanders. Like what was working with him like, and what was your relationship like with him, or what is your relationship like with him? Because again, he's a very important person in Islanders history. It just doesn't come up that often.
No, and that's because he left, he left after the 3rd cup.
Right.
And so, I think that, the credit goes, and rightfully so, to Bill Torrey and Al Arbour. Jimmy D should be in the Islanders Hall of Fame because he's still around and he still made all those great picks, or helped make them all. You can never say one guy made the pick, but he helped make some tremendous draft choices in the entry draft, and really was a huge asset for Bill Torrey, in my opinion, because Bill Torrey was not a pure hockey guy. Like, he wasn't a guy that had spent his life honing his craft just in hockey. He'd been ice capades in Pittsburgh and done other things. Obviously was a very bright guy, a very bright businessman, a really quick learner. But I think Jimmy Devellano and his work ethic and his every night at games, along with Jerry Eman and Earl Ingerfield and others, that was where they really excelled.
Yeah, no, I agree. That whole group was again. I could hear stories about those guys. The Henry Saraceno story again about saying, he was so adamant that they should draft Bossy that he just basically convinced everybody else. I forget who they wanted.
Well, that story. Here's how that story goes. So Henry Saraceno goes to Laval every Monday night to watch the Laval National. That was the name of the team when Bossy was there. And he's telling Jimmy and everybody all season, you got to see this kid, Michel. They call him Michel Bossy back then. You got to see this guy. He can score. He can score. And Jimmy had a guy in the OHL named Dwight Foster that was playing for the Kitchener Rangers. And so, of course, the guys from the East wanted the Dwight Foster, but Henry Saraceno said, you're not going to find a guy like this. So Al Arbor at the draft table said, tell me about these two guys. They told him, and Al said, let's take the guy that can score goals. I can teach him how to play better defensively, but I can't teach a guy how to score goals. Yeah. And so if he's a natural goal scorer, let's go with him. And that's how they took Mike Bossy.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's still crazy to this day. The Leafs and Rangers each passed him twice. He went 15th. It's crazy. Just much like, again, drafting Lidstrom in the third round and Fedorov in the fourth. Like it's just crazy that these guys are just there, and they're just there, and then boom, they're in the Hall of Fame, multiple Stanley Cups and all that kind of stuff. Just a few more for you, Neil. And again, I really, really appreciate you staying on with me and all these great stories. The Islanders currently, as you and I are talking, it's May 13th. The Islanders had the first overall pick. Nobody expected them to leave Secaucus with that pick, but they've got it. And there's a few guys that, they can take. Although one guy, Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, seems to have kind of the inside edge as far as first overall picks go. There's a sentimental pick, obviously, in there as well. When you have a first overall pick, like, how does that change the sort of, the metrics for you as for a team, I should say, as either a general manager or as a head scout? Is there anything different there that you can do as opposed to like when you have, say, a 7th overall pick or, a 10th overall pick or a 28th overall pick? Like, this is the first pick. It seems like there's a lot more pressure involved here than just, taking the best player available.
Absolutely. And unfortunately for the Islanders, according to what I'm hearing, and not what I'm seeing, but what I'm hearing, is there's no real generational player here. Right. There's no Bedard. There's no Connor McDavid. And so, you're going to get a good player, maybe, like Lafreniere is in New York. You're not going to get a Jack Hughes.
Yeah.
But you've got to get it right. And when I say get it right, in a year like this, you could pick first overall and the guy picked third overall ends up being a better player. That could happen very, very easily. But you got to make sure you get a player who's going to play for a long time. It might end up he's the best guy, long term that came out of the draft. It might end up that he's second or third best, but he's got to be in that group. You can't make a mistake when you've got this one chance. And so, unfortunately, what I find with fans, and it happens a lot in the city in New York with the Rangers, they're unmercilessly on Capo Caco, who was second overall to Jack Hughes.
Yeah.
Because they were always disappointed that he wasn't nearly as good as Jack Hughes in their view. Well, you know what? Capo Caco's an NHL player. Capo Caco's a contributing NHL player. And there was nothing wrong with Capo Caco being drafted there. But they basically ran him out, I think, from what I watched. And they're down on Lafreniere too, because of course he slid backwards this year, but the whole team slid backwards like slipping into quicksand. So this is what can happen. Going back to the Islander pick, they just got to get it right. And when I say get it right, you know what? Just, you don't necessarily have, it's so close that, and if here's the other thing I say, is that if your scouts and your people think that it's very close, it's a toss-up between the kid from Long Island and the kid from someplace else, take the kid from Long Island, because let the fans and the thing have a local guy on the team. But if it's not close, then you can't take the guy from Long Island. You have to take the best guy.
Yeah, that seems to be about right. Mike and I, we recorded as soon as the lottery was over, and we were all about James Higgins. And then, after hearing people talk, I didn't realize, I had never heard of Matthew Schaefer before that moment. Like, we had only ever talked about Higgins because we didn't think, the Islanders would ever have a shot at getting him. And so it's kind of funny that here we are, and all of a sudden it's like, maybe Higgins isn't the right guy. Maybe Schaefer is the right guy, but we won't know for another few weeks.
Well, and then to throw one last comment on that, and here's the problem. So this is going to be the draft of 2025. And if they don't take the kid from Long Island, and in 2028, he's a great player somewhere else, they're going to say, can you believe they had a kid right from Long Island in the draft and they overlooked him to take this guy?
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. We've gone through that scenario on the show. Yeah, it's possible. But if he's playing in Nashville or something like that, my only hope is if that does happen, it is nowhere in the Eastern Conference. If it's Nashville, okay, great. If it's San Jose, great. If it's Chicago, great. If it's Philly, not so great. That's great insight. And you're right. If it's close, yeah, maybe. But this one doesn't sound. It sounds sort of close, but maybe not too close. But again, we'll have to see, but it's just there's a lot of pressure there. Just a couple more for you. We have been dancing around your Stanley Cup with the Rangers. It wasn't just a Stanley Cup with the Rangers. It was 3 Patrick Division titles, 2 President's trophies, obviously an Eastern Conference championship and a cup. So, I mean, and plus 2 very decisive playoff series victories against the Islanders. We don't need to go into the details of those. We already have on a couple episodes of this show. And this is where I do some very deft podcasting here, where I turn a Rangers question into an Islanders question. When you were hired by the Islanders, you said that the Islanders showed me what it takes to win, again, through your long time with them. So what lessons did you take from observing the Islanders, working with the Islanders, playing, in the minors for the Islanders? What lessons did you take from that group that did help you get the Rangers over the hump in 1994?
I think it was just the attitude that you had to have to ultimately win. And the attitude that the only thing that's good enough is a Stanley Cup. Nothing else is good enough. We don't want to end and we don't want to get to the second round, third round. No, we want to win the cup and we have to win the cup. And when I was there with Al and Bill, that's all they thought about. We have to win the cup. And the year before I got there, which was 1980, I'd been at training camp in 1978, and Al Arbor came into our locker room, at Racket and Rink, and he said, obviously there's some opportunity here. He says, we can't be that great because we haven't won anything, so there's a chance. And then he walked back out, and I thought to myself, holy moly! I mean, there's the attitude. Is that like you're no good until you won? And that was my attitude, and still is to this day, is that, you know what, there's only one thing I want to do, and that's win the cup. And I was like that in New York too. And it seemed like a far-fetched dream to be able to do it in New York because so many had tried and nobody'd been able to do it. But through some luck and through some smart things, I guess we were able to do it. And I'll give you a secret here that people wouldn't know. Greg Gilbert was on that Ranger team. Right. And Greg Gilbert, I knew from his rookie year with the Islanders. And Greg Gilbert and I associated each other with the Islander days. And when I went onto the ice, when we won the cup for the Rangers, I looked at Gibby. I grabbed him by the arms. I said, Gibby, we did it for these assholes. Can you believe it? We did it for these assholes. And that's the God's honest truth.
That is absolutely amazing. That's one of the most amazing things I've heard on an episode of this. That's unbelievable.
Well, and it was said in jest, but in sort of like where we came from.
Right.
And we had come from there. Now we're here, the hated rival that we had.
Yeah.
And we worked so hard to get our hated rival the Stanley Cup, and it was just seemed appropriate, but it was in laughter. You're saying, it wasn't like, I mean, I love the Ranger fans. Of course, they love me, but it was more like, can you believe it?
Right,
we did it.
I know.
It was the unbelievable dream.
Yeah. I mean, you spent how many years working in and around the Islanders, and here you are with the Rangers winning the cup. And again, the first cup for the Rangers since before World War II. That had to have been unbelievable. And that's so funny. I'm sure you guys had a great laugh after that and enjoy the cup. Neil, this has been so fantastic. I cannot thank you enough. You've been just so gracious with your time and so candid. It's really mind-boggling, to be honest with you. Tell everybody where they can find the NHL Wraparound podcast. I know everybody's going to be on the lookout for this Islanders 45th anniversary episode that's going to come up on May 24th. Again, perfect timing. But please tell everybody what it's all about and where they can find it.
Well, NHL Wraparound Podcast is really about what's going on in hockey today, but also associating it with what's gone on in the past and trying to draw some parallels from a couple of old guys that have been around a long time and really enjoy today's hockey, but also have a great affection for the past. So this is not a podcast that you want if you want to sit around and listen to guys talk like locker room talk and talk, about their days in playing and running around trying to get girls and all that. This is more about trying, if you want to catch up on what happened last night in the NHL in the Stanley Cup playoffs, we have a thing called Stanley Cup Dates, which we do every day about what's gone on, opinions, different things. We have great guests on every week. Today we had Dave Jackson on from ESPN, the referee that is the analyst. That will come out tomorrow. And we really have a lot of fun doing it. And what our hope is that you'll learn something each and every episode that you wouldn't have known had you not listened. And I think even in doing this with you, we've given your listeners a couple of things here that they wouldn't have known had they not listened to your podcast. So that's our goal. And I think that should be the goal of every podcast and every show, is to deliver to people something that they wouldn't have known, because that makes it worth listening to. So you can find NHL Wraparound on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, everything. It's everywhere. And we're hoping to get more subscribers. We don't have enough. We're only in it 15 months, but we know it's a long-term play.
Yeah, no, it's great. I've listened to it. I'll put a link in there so people can find it, but I think we'll get you some more subscribers. But no, it's great. And like you said, it's about learning stuff and getting different perspectives. And that's what we do too. It's all about finding different perspectives, and your perspective on all of these topics throughout Islanders history and even modern day, what they should do with their pick have been fantastic. We have just another minute, and I have to ask you this question because sometimes you see stuff on the internet and you're not sure if it's real or not. And I have you here. And so I have to ask you this question, and I hope it's true. I read on an old scouting report thing here that in 1983, you played a hockey player in a TV miniseries called Range of Angels, starring one of my favorite Charlie's Angels, Jacqueline Smith. A, is that true? And B, what can you tell me about the filming of this and your, associations, if any, with Jacqueline Smith?
Well, it is true. What happened was that summer, the Armand Assante was in that movie with Jacqueline Smith. He was the male star, and they were at a hockey game. Supposedly, this was part of the screenplay, and they got Billy Smith to dress up in his uniform as an Islander, and they got Rich Torrey and me to be the skaters as Rangers.
Oh, wow.
And they froze half the ice at Nassau Coliseum so that we could film this part. And what it was when you watch the movie, you'll see that Jacqueline Smith and Armand Assante were in the stands, and Billy Smith came out and hit me, and supposedly a big fight broke out, and it was just part of their scene in the movie that they were talking or whatever they were doing.
Hey, you see? See number three? Number three right here?
Yeah.
That's the Rangers policeman.
You guys are no good. Out there, he'd get killed.
No. Every team has a policeman. It's a player who's sitting just as an enforcer.
I see, an enforcer.
Yeah, the player is sitting by the coach. And his players are getting roughed up. In goes the policeman, and it generally tends to sort of rough the other team.
So why are they fighting?
Both teams send in their policemen.
I got my picture with Jacqueline Smith. I still have that. She was beautiful, a beautiful woman, as you know.
Yeah.
And I got to meet Armand Assante, and I don't know if we got paid anything to do it. I got to ask Rich Torrey.
Yeah.
But isn't it though insane that they cast me as a Ranger?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, that's really funny. Like, it's insane.
It's insane that these things that happen earlier in life that show up later in life. And no, that's all true.
Wow. That's crazy. Not only is it crazy that you played a Ranger in that movie, but how was Rich Torrey even allowed back in his house after having to wear a Rangers jersey in a TV movie? He must have been like, Dad, it's just a TV. I swear it's just for the movie. This has been fantastic, Neil. Thank you so much. Normally I would throw it to Mike at this point, but any final thoughts on your very brief, but frankly, very productive and memorable, shall we say, for lack of a better word, time running the Islanders?
I can only tell you this. I would love to be with the Islanders today. I would love to be around the Islanders, not necessarily as a GM, not necessarily as anything, but as part of the Islanders. And it's sad that didn't work out. I'm glad that I did what I did and I left. And I'm glad that I have on my resume the fact that I was able to do for the Islanders what I did in a very short period of time. But I would love to contribute to see the Islanders go back and succeed again. I enjoy my role with UBS and being able to go to the games and see all the Islander fans and a lot of people that whisper in my ear, "I'm really a Ranger fan," But no, it was not enjoyable being there then. But what was enjoyable was seeing that what I did was productive.
And it was, and we remember it. And again, we thank you for some players that we came to know and love as Islanders. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on with us. Thanks again. Become a member at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for ad-free episodes and bonus content. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible. You know all the drill. Our theme song is Knuckles by Bjorn Falk. Listen to more of Bjorn's music on Bandcamp and Spotify. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for your most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Islanders Anxiety podcasts are part of the Fans for Sports Network. Shop VenturesIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Until next time, keep the Islanders weird, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.